go over anything or answer any questions that you might have. Um, so what we're doing today is we're doing another demo with our self-portrait. So we created the self-portrait first with hard-coded just numbers and colors. Um, and oh wait, sorry, I'm not streaming. Okay, sorry about that. I'm just gonna go and open up the editor. Um, and so my original self-portrait, self-portrait version 1 is right here. Um, excuse me. Oh, actually, I added variables to this one. I need to rename these because I ended up overwriting it. I think this is, oh, okay, I didn't, okay. I accidentally saved over the original self-portrait that I did. So I don't have a version of the old self-portrait, but let me see if I can find. We can just look at the art example uh, for a second. Okay. So imagine that this is my self-portrait for a minute, and what I want to just point out is that in the original version that we did, all of the arguments that we used for our functions for creating the background, the fill, the points for the circle and the sizes, the colors for the stroke and the stroke weight and the points for our lines, all of these things are just hard-coded numbers. And so that means that they don't change over time. Variables are useful for lots of things, but that's one of the main things that differentiate them from what we call hard-coded. And that's what I'm going to try to demonstrate today. And again, it's not the only thing that we use variables for, but it's kind of a good way of showing the difference between something that we store as a variable versus something that we're, just a hard-coded number that we just write directly into the code. Um, so that's kind of where we started off. And then what we did last week is we created some variables. So, we learned how to declare a variable with var and then name a variable using our JavaScript syntax, our camel case syntax. And then we use the equal sign to assign the value to the variable. And then we have different values that we can use, numbers that can represent position and size. Um, my computer was throwing a temper tantrum. That happens, no worries. We have strings, which are strings of characters that can be used to represent colors or other values like text, which we'll actually get into in a couple weeks. And that's pretty much it. That's actually all we've covered so far. So we're still kind of learning the basics. And what the approach that we used before is to read through our self-portrait code and look for places where we could replace an existing number with a variable. And then we also look to see if there were things that were the same number and represented the same value. So X positions of a bunch of shapes or sizes of a bunch of different shapes. And so then we could replace those with the same variable. And so that's how we end up with what we have here, where we have a variable X, and we can see that we use X as this position for the body rectangle, and then again for the head rectangle. And then down here, we use the X, and then we add that width of the eye to get the X position for the left eye, so we can move the eye over a little bit. And so that's how we approached adding variables in the previous example. In the example that I'm going to do today, I'm basically going to, take a look at what the self-portrait looks like. It changed a little bit when I added variables, which is fine. It doesn't have to look exactly the same. And I'm going to try to recreate this, but instead of using the code I've already got, I'm just going to start from scratch and kind of design it with my variables in mind. So that's what I'm going to do today. It doesn't really matter which approach you take. Ultimately, what you want to do is have a sketch that starts with a whole bunch of variables describing different parts of your self-portrait. And your self-portrait, again, just as a reminder, can be it doesn't have to look like you. It doesn't have to actually be a representation of yourself. We saw some really cool examples of, the flower for the Malibu Barbie logo. So we see there's lots of different things that you can represent that don't necessarily have to look like a person or like you specifically. Um, so anyway, so we have all these variables that kind of like describe these different parts of the self-portrait. And what we're going to get in, part of what we're doing is leading into next week when we're going to add interaction to our self-portrait. And so what we're going to kind of see is that we can use variables to move things or to change things over time, to create interaction or animation. And that's what I'm going to try to demonstrate today, because I'm going to use a couple concepts that we haven't really covered yet, just to kind of like show where we're kind of going towards. But I'm going to focus mainly on using the variables. Um, so anyway, you have a couple different ways to approach this. If you're not sure what you want to do, we could look at your self-portrait together and say, it might be easier to do it this way. It might be easier to do it the other way, or maybe a combination of the two. You could use part of your self-portrait, but then delete some of it and add some on top of it. There's different ways to go about it. Um, Let's take a look at the assignment in Blackboard for just a second before we start the demo. So I'm going to go over to Blackboard and go to my MMP 210 class, and I'll turn on the student preview so it looks more familiar. And we're going to go to assignments, and here it is, self-portrait 2 with variables. Okay, so the instructions, where'd the instructions go? Are up here. So use variables for X and Y, position of the self-portrait. The entire self-portrait should move when X and Y are changed. That part is a little bit like I'll show you what that means today. And then, we can go from there. So then you can also add variables for size and color, and then submit. Should actually say, oh, this is just a P5 post. Um, yeah, because the image is going to look the same. Okay, so we're not doing an open lab post for this one, but we still want to look at them in class. So I might change that to make an open lab post just so we can see everybody's work in class. I kind of forgot that I had it set up that way. This is due on Monday, so we're going to have some time in class to do it tonight. And then it'll be due Monday at the beginning of class. And then there's a rubric for this. So always remember that we have these rubrics, and so you can see what's required. It's pretty much the same stuff. Hard-coded numbers replaced with variables. Variable name should be using the naming convention. So start with a lowercase letter and then uppercase letters for subsequent words. So camel case. And I'll do examples of that during the demo. Um, and that's pretty much it. That's really the whole focus of this week is variables. It's not as exciting as some of the other things that we're going to do in the class, but it's really important. It's a really important concept to start working on. You may not get it exactly at first, but that's okay. Programming is something that takes a really long time to like fully understand, even though we can kind of use it as we're getting to know it. So we're going to be kind of doing both of those things at the same time. And then submit a link to the code, obviously, and then comments using the code. Remember to use comments. The comments are just the descriptions of what the code is doing, and so that is going to be part of your grade. And so just make sure to do that. If you don't do it, if you forget to do it, I'll say, you didn't add comments, and you can go back and add the comments in and resubmit it. Keep in mind you can always resubmit assignments if you want to improve them or add to them or whatever. Okay. Enough of that. So let's actually get into the demo. So what I'm going to try to do is recreate this self-portrait, but I'm going to start from scratch. So I'm not going to reuse the code I already have. I'm going to start with a new self-portrait, and I'm going to kind of think about what I need to add to it to get what I want. So I'm going to open up a new editor window. I'm going to keep this window here for reference. And the only thing I'm going to copy here is just the size of the canvas. So it's actually that's the only difference. So I don't really need to copy and paste that. I'm just going to put this 600 there. And then I have a background color. I might copy that because I don't really want to redo that. So let's copy in the background color so I can just focus on the self-portrait itself. So I'm just going to copy and paste this in here. Okay. And then let's go ahead and tidy this. And then I'm going to put a comment at the top. Remember, your programs always need to start with a comment at the top. That's part of the points that you get for writing comments. The comment at the top is just a really useful convention in coding. You'll see it if you look at code pretty much anywhere that just says like, this is what this is. This is what you're about to read. Often, if it's code that other people might want to use, there might be copyright information there or licensing information there. There'll be information that kind of, is useful to whoever's reading it. Because coding, even though it like has this output, which is what we see on the screen, it is still itself a document that other people will read. Um, in your case, mainly me when I look at it. So anyway, so we're going to say this is our self-portrait with variables part two by on. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Anytime I'm doing a demo, I'll be recording unless I forget to, but I can see the recording thing is on, so I haven't uh, forgotten to. And I'll just put the date here just for reference. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna map out what I want for my self-portrait. So um, so for my self-portrait, I need like a head and a body, and the eyes need to be the same distance apart. And then I need a mouth and a nose. And I don't know if I'm going to keep the weird quad in the middle. Maybe I will. So I need a head, body, eyes, oops, mouth and nose, and maybe some decoration. Okay. So before I really start writing any code at all, I'm gonna just run this, and we see the canvas here. It is quite dark, so it kind of blends in with the background, but we can see the outline. And I'm gonna use my, oops, oh, I don't have my screen brush on. I'm gonna use my screen annotation, screen brush to start kind of drawing out what I want here. Okay. And what I want to keep in mind with this one is that I want like a point which can move right or left or up or down without breaking the self-portrait. And I'm going to go over a few examples of that. So this is going to be the XY position of the self-portrait. And I think the line width is a little too wide. Okay. So I'm going to start with the XY position. I'm going to build from there. So here's my XY. And first I need a head. So I could make the head go up here and the body go down here. That's one way I could do it. But most of the stuff I'm using is going to be in the head. That's like where most of the detail is. So I'm going to put the head directly in the middle. So here's my XY. I'm going to put the head here, and I'll put the body down here. Okay. So then um, a couple things I know. So my X position is kind of like the middle here, and then this is going to be the Y. So here's my X, here's my Y. So I know that like I want a couple eyes, and I'm going to want them in the middle of the head, but probably up a little bit. So I'll probably have the eyes like up here. And I probably want them equidistant from this middle line, from the X. They don't have to be like, you could show somebody like looking to the side, but most likely I want that value to be the same. So that's something that I can reuse or save as a variable, whatever this value is right there. Then I want the mouth to be kind of centered. Oh, and I want the nose to go like this, and the mouth is kind of like that. Um, and so that's kind of my basic approach. And another thing I may want to do is make it so that the size is relative to everything else. I'll do that last. If we get that far, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Um, so I'm going to start again by defining X and Y, and then building from there. Okay, so I'm going to say variable X, and I'm going to put this in the middle of the page. So I know X is or the width of my canvas is 400. So I'm going to start X is 200, just put it directly in the middle. And then the height of the canvas is 600. But my head, I probably want towards the top. So I'm actually just going to use the same number for Y. I'm going to use 200. And then uh, if I have this head here, I probably want to know this value and this value. So the width and the height of the head. But let's come back to that. Let's come back to that. Let's keep it simple for now. Okay, so I have my X and Y, and now I'm going to draw my head. So I'm going to say the head part. And so I'm going to use an ellipse here at X and Y. And let's just start with 50 and take a look. That's a little too small, so let's do like 100. Okay, that's a decent size. Let's make it maybe even bigger, 200. That's bigger than I want. So let's go with 100, nice and round. And then I'm going to make the it a little bit taller because that's how my original looked like. And so that's looking pretty good so far. And so now I'm going to change the color just a little bit. So I'm going to say no stroke for now. So I just have the white oval, and then I have a fill here. And so here, I'm using variables here. I have my X and Y here, and I hard coded this, but I'm going to go fix it later. Um, but I want to make sure to be using variables. So for my fill, I'm going to use a color for this. So I'm going to call this face color. And for the face, in my original, I had like a blue face, so I'm just going to call this blue. And then I'll put my face color and paste it inside my fill. And there we go. We've got a blue face. So we're off to a good start. And here's where I'm going to show you where variables differ from hard-coded numbers. So this is not part of what we want to do with this assignment, but very soon we'll start to add interaction and animation. And so one thing I can do real quickly is I can animate the value of x by saying x plus plus. I'm just adding one to x every frame. So remember the draw frame is always running. And so I'm just adding one to x. So it's very slowly moving across the canvas. I'm going to go over this in a lot more detail in a couple of weeks. But for now, I just want to use this as a way of demonstrating the difference between something that's hard-coded and something that's a variable. And I'm going to reset x. Also, don't worry about this because we'll go over this later. But I'm going to say if x is greater than 400 x equals 0. This is just to reset the animation. Okay, so all I really want is to have this animation running as a way, this way I'll immediately know if something is working with my design or not. And I'll show you why. So I have my head, and so the next part I want to start working on is the eyes. And the eyes actually have a few parts. They have like the eyebrows, which are arcs. They have the little dots in the middle, which I think are just points with the big stroke, which I could probably do as circles. That's probably smarter. Um, and then I have glasses. So I'm going to do all of those parts. But I'll show you what's going to happen. So if I hard code the eyes, let's turn this off for a second. Okay, so I'm going to change the fill and let's set the eye color. So my eye color is, I think it was yellow. And so I'm going to take that eye color and put it in here. Whoops. And then I'm going to draw two eyes. So I'm going to start with, let's just start with the pupils. That's easy. So I'm going to do a little circle. And I know that it's, it's 200 for X, but I'm going to hard code this first. So I'm going to say 200. And for Y, it's going to be a little less than 200. So I'll say like 160 maybe. And then for the size, I'm just going to do 10. I'm going to make them kind of small. And I'm going to make two of them. So I'll have a left eye and a right eye. And right now they're in the same place because they're both at 200x. It's a little higher than I wanted, so let's do like 180. Okay, and so now I'm going to move them apart. So I'm going to add a bit to one and subtract a bit to the other. Okay, and so now we're getting close to something that looks like our original self-portrait. But look what happens when I put this animation back in. We see part of the self-portrait is moving, the head is moving. Because X can change. X is a variable. X can change over time. which is what this is doing here. But 200 can't change. 200 is always 200. So remember the draw function, all of the code in the draw function gets run 60 frames per second. That's how we get motion. That's how we get interaction. And so it's redrawing everything that we ask it to draw really, really fast all the time. And so what's happening is that my X is changing because I'm adding 1 to X every single frame. But my I isn't changing because 200 is it just is always 200. It's hard coded. It's just a number. And so the way that I can get these I's to move along with the head is to offset them by X. Okay, so if I just use X, the I is going to be in the middle. And that's good. It's moving now, but it's not what we want. We want to offset it. So the way that I offset it is just by putting back in that plus 20. So now it's moving, but it's also, it's still to the right. So I have my X and then I have my I, and they're both moving across. And so that's how I get things to move, but also stay relative to each other. And that's how I can create animation if in a game or in a 2D animation or in a 3D animation, whatever type of different animation you might be doing, that's how it works. You have a position and everything is relative to that position, and then you move it around. So we can put X in here for this one. Okay, so that's looking good. And then real quick, I'm just going to do the same thing with Y, just so we can see if it's working on the Y axis as well. So I'm just going to put Y here and Y here, and it doesn't really matter what number that is. And I'll put Y here as well. Okay, so now my head's moving down and my eyes are moving across, uh, but they're not moving together. Again, the eyes are using X and they're offset by X, but this head now has Y. And so the head is moving down as Y gets bigger, but the eyes aren't going. And you might think this actually looks kind of cool. It's kind of interesting, right? But so maybe we can use variables to do things like this that are kind of fun. And as you're kind of like exploring using variables in different ways, you might find things that are pretty interesting. But we don't really want to do that. So what we need to do is figure out how to offset by y. So we know y is also 200, and 180 happens to be 20 less than 200. That's pretty convenient. So let's just do that. So let's say y plus, or no, these are both minus because they're both going up versus the x, which are going in different directions. So y minus 20, y minus 20. There we go. Now we're all moving in the same direction at the same time. So again, your self-portrait this week does not have to move, but this is a good way of testing it. This is a good way of seeing. I'll just write a little comment here that says, check if X and Y's are working right. Okay. So let's keep going. I'm not going to like fill out everything just because that'll take too much time, and I want to give you guys more time to work. But I'll just do the arc over the eyes real quick. So I have the eyes, and so I have the left pupil, right pupil, and I'll do the left and right eyebrows. So what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this whole thing, so I don't have to like rewrite everything. So I'll change this circle to an arc, change this circle to an arc, and then say left eyebrow, right eyebrow. And then with an arc, we know that we need a few more numbers. So we leave the same x and y because we're going to start in the middle. Here, where we have the size, we need width and height for the arc. Because of the way it's written, we can't just use the one. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to say it's, let's say 40. And then let's use the same number for the height. So we'll do 40 by 40. And then remember with the arc, we need to tell it where to start and where to end. And just to review real quick, if this is the center of the arc, 3 o'clock is 0. Okay, so this is 0. And 6 o'clock equals pi. So this rotation is 0 to pi. And then when we rotate back around, we get to 2 pi, or we can just go back to 0. So what I want is this top one. That's probably what looks like an eyebrow, but maybe you have upside down eyebrows. It doesn't really matter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at pi, and I'm going to go to 0. So that should get my arc correct. So I'm going to start at pi and go to 0. And I'm going to do the same thing down here. And then I don't want it to fill in. Oh, so I'm going to have to change this. So I'm going to have to say no fill stroke yellow. And oh, stroke is not yellow, it's eye color. Got to remember to use our variables. Eye color. And we're going to want to increase the stroke weight a little bit so we can see this. So I'm going to say like 4. Okay, that's pretty good. Although now I have a unibrow, which is fine. That's nothing wrong with that, but it's not exactly what I was expecting. So let's make this a little bit smaller. Just make the width smaller. Okay, that looks okay. I don't know. It's not, it doesn't have to be perfect. It's good enough for a demo. I'm not gonna tweak it much more. So there we go. Um, let's add in uh, let's add in well, let's actually, I was gonna say the body, but you know what? We already know how to put, actually, no, let's go over that real quick. Okay, I'm gonna try to do this quickly because I do want to stop so you guys can do your own work. Okay. So I want to put in the nose and the mouth and the body just to kind of review those things real quick. So let's go to the nose. And this is a good part for the nose because I've already set the stroke here and I'm going to use a line for the nose. And so this is where it gets a little bit trickier. Um, so with a line, I have an XY here and I have an XY here. Okay, so I don't have a central position that moves the whole thing like I do with my circles and my arcs. I'm gonna have to offset this one and this one by X. So I have XY here, I have XY here, and I'm gonna have to use X and then say, plus whatever, minus whatever. Um, so let's try to map that out real quick. I'm gonna pause my animation for a second and see if I can do this mathematically real quick. So I probably want my line from like here, maybe directly in the center, just to keep it simple, down to here for a nose. Um, and so that's going to be the XY center, and then we're going to move over this way on X. So we say, maybe we'll just use the same number, X plus 20, and then we're going to move down on Y. So maybe we'll say Y plus 40 to keep it simple. Let's see how that looks. So for my nose, I have a line, and I'm going to go start on XY, and then I'm going to move over X plus 20, and I'm going to move down Y plus 40. And there we go. There's a nose. It's too big, so let's do Y plus 20. Uh, Whatever. It's fine. I'm not gonna. That's good enough. Good enough for now. Okay. Let's figure out the mouth now. And so the mouth is a triangle. Okay, so it's the same thing as the line, but it gets a little bit more complicated because we're going to have something like this. So we have XY, XY, XY. But really all we have is like versions of the same thing. So these two dots are kind of like our eyes, but we're going this way. Remember, the center is here, so we're going down instead of up. So I could probably just copy those points from my circles for the eyes and move them. And then this guy is in the middle, but down. So I think we can really just copy and paste a bunch of stuff for this. So if with the mouth, I'm going to start with a triangle. Okay, and remember I can put points on multiple lines. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an XY, an XY, and an XY. And I just need 3 points to make a triangle. And so I'm going to see if I can just copy and paste most of those. So I'm going to copy and paste the left pupil. I'm going to copy and put it right here and put a comma at the end. I just have to remember to do that. Let's see what this little yellow guy is. Remember this from last night. Oh, this is ES8. Wow, I didn't know that. Okay. We're farther along than I thought we were. ES8 just means it's just the JavaScript standard. It doesn't really mean anything. Okay, so that's the pupil, but we're going the other way. So instead of going up for the eyebrow, we're going down for the mouth. So I'm going to say plus here, and then same thing here. I'm going to copy and paste and put a comma, and just add a little plus here. And then for the bottom, It's still in the middle, so we're going to say X, just regular X, and then we got to move it down. So we're going to say Y plus 40. Let's see how that looks. Okay, everything needs to move down farther. So let's say Y plus 40 up here and Y plus 80 down here. Okay, looks weird, but again, just for the demo's sake, I'm not going to spend too much more time on this. There we go. We got the mouth. So again, when I'm using circle or arc or rectangle, I have a center and then I can move it wherever I want. When I have a line or a triangle, I have points and I have to move all of the points. So all of the points have to use X and Y. So let's check. Let's make sure they all move. We did it. So this is what would happen if I, did one of those wrong. Let's say with my line first, instead of Y plus 20, I have 220. The nose is stuck because that number is not changing, but everything else is changing. So again, maybe that's kind of cool. I could play with that, but it's kind of looks like Pinocchio, which is not something that was planned, but it is kind of funny that it's like a Pinocchio thing. So then if I change something with the triangle, I'll just do the same one, replace Y with 220. Now we have the same thing with the mouth. So one part of our triangle is stuck because it's hard coded, but everything else is moving because we're using variables. So let's put that back in, and there we go. Okay, one more bit. I'm going to add the body, and then I'll be done, at least for this demo. And here's one more thing that we want to remember. So let's turn these off again. So if I want my body to be right here, I want it to line up with X. And then remember, Y is here. It's like right where the nose starts. And so we're just going to say Y plus whatever this is. Okay. And so that's all we're going to use. But remember, our rectangle by default draws from here. So if I just use those values exactly, what I'm going to end up with is a rectangle like this. But what I want is a rectangle that starts over here and goes like this. So what I'm going to do is just change the rect mode rather than doing math. I'm going to draw a rectangle. So I'm going to start with X and Y plus like, I don't know, probably 50, maybe 100. And then for the width, let's just say 100. For the height, let's say 200. And then for those rounded corners, I'm going to use 20 there. And see, it's offset. Let's change the fill back to face color and no stroke. Okay, so it's offset because I have rect mode set to default, which means that the rectangle starts here and then goes over and down. But what I want is a rectangle that starts here, but then draws around it like the circle. And the way that I get that is by just saying rect mode is center. So we've talked about that before, but we can just review it real quick. Now my body is covering up my face, so I need to move it down farther. So let's say Y plus 200. Um, Now there's like kind of a gap, but it actually kind of looks cool. So let's just leave it. That's fine. Let's bring back our animation. Okay, cool. All right. I'm going to show you guys one more thing and then let you guys work on your own project. So we've done all of our variables really well for the position, for the where the things start. But something that we haven't really addressed is the size of things, and that can be a little bit trickier. So I'm going to stop the animation again for a second, and I'm going to just look a little bit about the size of stuff. So we talked about this a little bit last time, but basically we have like the width of the head, and I think that basically matches the height here. And then we have the height of the head. The height of this is probably a little bit bigger. But then we have this distance and we have this distance. And that's, pretty much the same. And then I think this distance is the same. I think this is the same as that, and this is the same as that, and that's the same. And even this is kind of the same. Um, and so we have a lot of numbers there that are being repeated that we could replace with variables. So just looking at the top, we have 100 for the width for the head. Let's move the body actually up here. So we can just keep the no stroke and fill that we're using. with the head. So let's just put the body up here because it's not overlapping with anything. We don't need to have it down here. Okay. All right. So we have 100 width for the head. We have 100 width for the body. So that's an easy one. Let's just call that W for width. So I'm going to say variable W equals 100. This is our width. I can't use width because it already exists, so we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I'm just going to put W here and W here. And now another thing that we can do is change the width, right? If I change this width number to 200, the whole thing expands. So that's pretty cool. Um, but can we animate that? Let's try it. So let's say uh, animate size. And so let's say W plus plus, and if W is greater than, let's say 200, W equals 0. Again, don't worry about this part. I haven't explained what a lot of that stuff is. So it's okay if it doesn't make sense. Oh, I don't want to reset W to 0 though. Let's reset it back to 100. Okay, so now we have like a little animation of the size. So that's kind of fun. Let's see if we can add the height in here. So I'm going to use H for height. But here I have a problem because the head height is 150 and the body height is 200. So again, I don't have to have that. I could just decide, the body's bigger or smaller. It doesn't, I could make them the same size. It doesn't really matter. I kind of have a choice there. I could even make the head height smaller. I could say, you know what, let's just make that 100 just to keep things simple. Oh, it looks like I might have an error here. Unexpected token var. Oh, I forgot to define height. Okay, so yeah, so you don't always have to do math to make everything work. You can just like change the design if that's easier. So let's see what it looks like if the head is 200. That's like too big. So I'm just gonna stick with 150. That's kind of what I like. So I'm gonna say the height is 150. And then I'm going to stick in the H here. And then here's where things are a little bit different. So when I'm using X and Y and I want to offset things, I can use plus or minus. And that makes sense because when I have a position, if I have something here and here, and I want them to move at the same pace, I can just add 20 pixels and that stays the same. When I'm using height and width, and this is where it gets trickier, which is also part of why it's optional in the assignment. So it's something that like is good to do if you want to extend what you're learning, but it's optional because it does make things a lot trickier and it's not necessary for the type of animation that we're going to do next week. Anyway, with size, you can't use addition because size is relative. So we have to use multiplication and division. So like if something is twice as big, uh, you know, that that's usually how we have to express things. So if I put h plus 50 here, we're going to start to see why. Oh, but I have to animate h. Let's copy this and paste it. So we're just going to do H, 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 and H starts at 150. And so let's animate it a little bit bigger. Let's animate it to 250. Okay. So now we can see that they're growing relative to each other, but they start to overlap. And so that's part of the issue, but there's also this issue of h plus 50. So even though things are expanding, this 50 is staying the same. So the way I really want to express this is 150. It's actually kind of hard because 150 is 200 is 150 times like a third or something like that. So that one's actually a bit of a tricky one. Maybe what I can do is I'm just going to do h times 2, whatever. It'll be fine. So we'll say h times 2 here. And there we go. So it's animating at the same rate. It looks a little ridiculous um, because I haven't offset the other values yet. But let's also move 200 down a little bit. That's another thing. So let's move 200 down by the height. Let's see. And yeah, let's actually say height times 2 here as well. Okay, now see they're moving relative. Okay, so this is actually a little bit trickier than I planned, but basically what I'm adding here now is I'm offsetting by this height value. So the height value can change, right? It's a variable, it's not hard coded. So the height is actually getting bigger. And so now instead of offsetting y by 200, if I offset by h, and really it's h times 2 because that's the value that I'm using here, then everything is growing at the same time. So again, the size aspect of this is a little bit trickier, and that's why it's optional. But I do want to see, we do want to go over it because it is a little bit different. It uses multiplication and division rather than addition and subtraction. So then we can kind of go through and look at our other components and think about how to, set them relative to the height that we have. Although I didn't really choose a good variable for this because everything is. Let's just set height back to 100. It's going to make things a lot simpler, even though it makes our original piece look a little weird. Okay. Uh, what am I? What did I change? Height is 100. Width is 100. Width, height, height times 2. Height times 2. I don't know why it's. Oh, because they're just. Oh, because I set this has got to be 200 now. That's why. Don't worry about the animation part because that's not part of this assignment. Okay, here we go. So we had to make some adjustments, but now we have a simpler way of approaching this. So then we can just do basic math. So the height is 100. 10 for the size of the pupil is just 1/10 of 100. So we can say height divided by 10. Okay, so now the eye is growing at the same rate as well. So we can put that in here. Okay, so now the eyes are growing at the same rate. So that's pretty exciting. We're starting to see everything move together. Um, let's go to the arcs. And so we have 20 and we have 40. So H is 100, so 20 is a fifth of 100, and 40 is two, uh, what is 40? 40 is like, I'm just going to add in another height. I'm going to say variable h10 equals height divided by 10. This is going to make it a little bit simpler. I guess this is probably getting too confusing at this point. I'm using a bunch of different variables. Um, oh, and then I'd have to animate. No, okay, never mind. Okay, so then for the arc, we'd have h divided by 5 and h divided by 5 for the height. Okay, so it's kind of going. I should really put this in a separate file because it's probably kind of confusing. So this one is, I'm just going to do h divided by 3. That's close enough. Okay, so now we're all animating bigger, but notice the eyes are going together. And that's the last thing I'll do. I'll stop there because hopefully the basic idea is going through, but it's probably getting a little bit too complicated at this point. Anyway, the eyes are starting to go together because everything's getting bigger, but the offset between the eyes is staying the same. This number right here, or sorry, this number right here, both of these numbers. And so both of those numbers are 20. They're both h over 5. Or one of them actually, okay, that's where it gets tricky. For the y's, we want to use the height, but actually, I did this one wrong too. Uh, let's undo these. Okay, so for the y's, I want to use the height, but for the x's, I want to use the width because obviously x is relative to width. Yeah, this gets way too complicated. Um, okay, so this would be width is the same value. That's why it's not breaking things. So this is still width divided by 5. Okay, so if we want to get those offsets also working, these hard-coded numbers have to be relative to the size. So we can do anything that's 20, we can say width divided by 5. We can say height divided by 5. Okay, so now we get that I is going. Okay, same thing here, width divided by 5, height divided by 5. Same thing down here real quick, width divided by 5, width divided by 5, and height divided by 5, height divided by 5. Okay, now everything is working at the same time. So again, the size is a little bit trickier than the position because things have to multiply. They can't just be offset by a single number. Um, but you can, if you want to animate the size or you want to work with the size, that's how you can do it. Okay, so this is a little bit nuts. I'm going to separate these into two separate files because this is way more complicated than the basic setup. But that's basically the idea, that you can use variables. They're relative to different things. So let's actually turn off the animation for a second. I'll show you one more example. So now that the width and height are relative, if I make this way bigger, everything stretches out because they're all relative to that width. If I make the height bigger, everything stretches up. So that's another way that variables are useful. They can do this math for us over time that there's really no way for us to do just using basic code. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. That's basically the assignment, is to add the position variables, and then you can add the color and the size variables. Um, I'm going to separate these into two separate files. So I'm going to duplicate this, and I'll work on that in a second, and then I'll post those. But I'm going to stop here. Um, And let's see, I already went over the Blackboard thing. So I think I've gone over everything. So we can use the rest of the class to work on the assignment. Obviously, if you have questions, let me know. If you want to look at stuff, if you want to stream your screen and go over stuff together, we can do that. But just think about what I would start with doing is just like looking at the code for your self-portrait and just saying like, if I change all the X's and Y's, is it going to take me forever? And if so, maybe I should just start from scratch and make something new, starting with X and Y and using those values as the center and then offsetting from there. So it kind of depends on how you approached it or what you think looks more interesting. You can kind of figure out what the best approach is going to be for you. So let me stop